Here are 3 hard truths you really have to accept if you want to have a successful nonprofit. In this video, I wanted to share advice on how to navigate change. And as a nonprofit or a business, you have to be able to navigate change. You have to be nimble. But given all the drastic changes that are happening right now in 2025, I thought it was really appropriate to talk about what you can do when things around you are shifting dramatically. So in this video, I'm going to give you 3 pieces of advice, and this is from someone who has been doing this work since 2016 and have been training and coaching startup founders since then around the startup process and also on how to get funding when you are a startup. So here's the first piece of advice I really want you to grasp. Things will never stay the same. So let me just take the economy. When the economy is doing well or is stable and is strong, it can get really easy to get comfortable. It can get really easy to say, well, things have always been this way because we're always going to have this, right? We're always going to have a lot of money coming from the federal government, or just use this strategy and this strategy will always work. But here's the thing. Things shift and change in our society as they should. And it just so happens right now, things are changing dramatically with the vast and horrible cuts to the federal workforce, with a lot of different policy changes being thrown at everyone. It's hard to know where the US will be when all the dust settles from just this year alone. But one thing I do know is that things are not going to be like they were in 2024. But I want to share some perspective here for you. Things in 2020 were not the way they were in 2019. The world as we knew it had completely shifted and changed. All of a sudden, we were scared to go outside. All of a sudden, we didn't know what to expect. We didn't know what was in the air. We didn't know what we were breathing. And there were so many people around us dying and perishing and suffering from this new disease, COVID-19. The point I'm trying to make is that usually when we go through change or things shift in how we look at things or culturally, usually it happens slowly. But a lot in recent years, we've been having some really fast, quick changes that completely shift how we look at each other, how we experience the world. And what I want to share with you is that that's how it's going to be. We are just in a period of a lot of fast changes. And I think in the United States in particular, we have gotten a little comfortable. There's always upset, there's always tumult in a lot of other countries, and we have been blessed to be relatively stable. But whether you want to admit it or not, a lot of these policy changes that are coming very swiftly and not with a lot of thought are going to have dramatic and devastating impacts on people, and it's going to change things for years to come. It's not just because of a new federal administration that things change. Things always change. We always go through things in our history. It's probably just that it feels deeper, it feels more intense because it's happening in a shorter time period. So first, what you got to understand is that change is going to happen. Change is inevitable. Sometimes change will be slow, and sometimes change will be quick and will slap you in the face. That's why it's so important for you as a new nonprofit, as a small nonprofit, to focus on strategy. Because here's the thing, a lot of times when you're a smaller or like a grassroots community organization, your focus is to respond to the need. You start some services because you see that people are suffering or there's a gap or there's a need. So in response to that, you rise up. In response to that, you create programs to address the need. But you get so caught up in the action, you get so caught up in the doing that you don't often have time to sit back and strategize and think about where your organization will be, how it will look 5 years from where you start. And I'm not saying this as a negative thing. I'm really just saying that this is the reality of most nonprofits that get started. You get so motivated and activated by the need to change something, but you don't often sit back and strategize and say, given policy shifts, given economic shifts, how should we pivot? How should we be? How should we position ourselves? How should we message our work so that we're still around 5 years from now? Where are we going to be 1 year from now? How can we position ourselves so we have the funding that we need? And how are we going to grow? And how are we going to respond to be able to have the resources to grow the way we need to go? A lot of people don't think about that. A lot of people are in the here and now when they start their organizations, and they're like, I don't have time to think about that. I just know people need me right now. That's why it's so important to have a focus not just on action, but a focus on strategy. And one of the reasons why people struggle so much with fundraising is not because fundraising is like some kind of rocket science, but I think that a lot of people struggle with fundraising, especially in the beginning, is because it requires strategy. It requires you to sit back, think, reflect, collect data, make decisions, and move forward on that data. So if you need to find donors, you got to figure out who your donors are. You got to figure out what messaging works for them. You got to test that messaging. You have to implement campaigns. Well, you have to write out those campaigns and write out your case statements and think about how you're going to message with this audience versus this audience. Or if you're going to go after foundation funding, it's about assessing which foundations fund the kind of work that you want to do and positioning yourself so that they would want to fund your new organization. A lot of that requires planning and thinking and assessment. Well, who has time to do that when you're literally responding to calls and emails for people who need you right now? So my piece of advice to bring it home for just this first point is that you got to focus on action and strategy. That's why a board is so critical, because that's the role of a board, to help you strategize, to help you think bigger, to help you dream bigger, but also figure out the plan and the steps to get there, to help fill in the places where you as the founder or you as the leader may not be able to do all the things, but they can fill in those gaps. And that's why it's so hard to launch in the beginning, because it's hard to find good board members. It's hard to find people who are committed. But that is the challenge that you have. And it's not impossible, but the challenge is for you to find a good group of people who can help you think and brainstorm about strategy moving ahead, but also help you manage the here and now, whether that's doing the work or delegating the work to other people. The second piece of advice I have to navigate change is that even though change is inevitable, there are some core principles that will never change. If you are starting a nonprofit or trying to run your small nonprofit, there are just core principles you should never ever abandon. Things like building relationships with people, things like building a sense of community, things like engaging with people around your mission, getting people excited about the need, not necessarily the organization, but about the need you address and the need to help someone or something out there. Those are things that will never change. How you address those things, how you carry out those things will shift, right? The strategies may need to shift. How you implement those strategies, who implements the strategies is always going to shift, but those are the core things you should be paying attention to and working on. A lot of people ask me, well, what should I be focused on when I'm new? What should I do to make sure that I'm on the right path? And for me, it'll always come back to start conversations, build relationships with people, find new people, get them excited about your mission. The more time you spend on talking to people, sharing your impact, cultivating those relationships, the more seeds you're planting and the more they will come to fruit later. But what I don't want you to do is fall trap to fads and trends. Well, everybody is doing social media marketing and everybody's doing Facebook fundraisers. So the way through our process is a Facebook fundraiser. That's one particular strategy. And over the years, that has shifted and changed. Years ago, it used to be that Facebook didn't charge you a fee for their donations and they would match donations on Giving Tuesday. Well, that's long gone. Things will shift, things will change. But that's not the core of your fundraising. That's just a strategy. The point is, people were engaged and excited about your mission. People you were connected to on your page and had relationships with on your page saw the work that you were doing, got excited about it, and wanted to support. And Facebook fundraising was a great way to enact peer-to-peer fundraising, where people organize and fundraise for you. If you need some help understanding what peer-to-peer fundraising is and why I love it as a strategy to raise money when you're new, check out this video that I'm linking above. So Facebook fundraising was just one strategy you could use to build relationship and connection with people, or to implement peer-to-peer fundraising strategies, which have been around for years and years and years and have been effective for years and years and years. It just looks differently as the times change. If you are stuck, especially when it comes to raising money and you have no idea what to do or where to start, what I always suggest people to do is talk to people. Talk to a donor, talk to a potential donor, share with them what you're doing, ask questions about what they care about, what they give to. And those conversations, if you have enough conversations, will be incredibly enlightening and you'll be able to see see trends and figure out how to talk about your work. You'll learn so much from that. But don't shy away from those conversations. Don't shy away from connection, because that's how you survive, through community and through connection. And here's the third piece of advice. It's going to take a long time, and that's okay. So I see the things that you see also when people talk about either starting a business, and even sometimes those people who talk about starting a nonprofit, and they make it seem so easy, right? They make it seem like all you got to do is fill out this paperwork, get started, get this grant here, and you're set. You can do this too. And so a lot of times people have these misrepresentations or these false assumptions about how easy or how simple it should be for them to go literally from nothing to working for their nonprofit full time, as an example. And so they beat themselves up when they're in year 2 and they feel like they haven't gone anywhere, or they've only raised $1,000, or they've only raised $5,000. But do you want to hear something funny? So I have a monthly membership. It's an accountability group for nonprofit founders. It's called Activate Your Purpose and Profit. And we have weekly calls where I give guidance around their fundraising. And when we talk about people's fundraising campaigns and they're like, well, I only raised this much, or I've only done this, and then I hear the numbers, I often say to them, that's completely normal. A lot of times people have these unrealistic expectations that they should be more, that they should have done more. It's much more important to understand that it's going to be a slow burn in most circumstances, but there's nothing wrong with that. You have to prove that you're able to ride out years and years of doing this work. And the trajectory of your nonprofit in a lot of ways has to be slow. Most movements, most things that start from the ground up, don't just turn up the next day. A lot of times when people are building something, they start small, people don't believe in them, and then something happens and they start gaining momentum and it grows and grows. Then it stops for a little while, and then it plateaus, and then something else happens and you grow and grow. Sometimes you see people who grow so fast and it's usually a lightning strike. It's usually a rare occurrence that somebody just grows magically overnight. So what I'm trying to get you to understand is the best way to navigate change is to not be unrealistic about where you should be. Because this is what's going to happen. You may be in a low period and you're saying to yourself, well, we're not raising enough money, or we're going to have to close one of our programs, or we're going to have to regroup. And you may be thinking that that's a sign that you should stop, or that's a sign that this is going to fail. But I have talked to several people who never thought their organization was going to make it, and then they stuck with it and were able to grow and grow and grow. But that took years for that to happen. And even people who are the most dedicated, the hardest workers, it still takes time for them to grow their organization to the size they want it to be. So what I need you to understand is if you're navigating through change and you're trying to sustain your nonprofit, that means there will be times you'll have to regroup. There will be times you have to shrink. There will be times you have to pause. But I need you to know that that's okay. I need you to know that that's normal. And I need you to hear that from someone else who's witnessed so many other people go through this journey just like you. And understand that even though it may take a long time for you to reach your goals or to get to the point where you want your nonprofit to be, that does not mean you're a failure. And that doesn't mean that you haven't helped somebody, you haven't blessed someone, and you haven't created change. Change is not measured by scale. Change is not measured by the fact that you helped 500 versus one person. You could help one person, and the impact you have on that person's life could be completely immeasurable. But here you are getting down on yourself because you only helped one person. Well, who's to say that that still doesn't make an impact? Whether you help one person or 1,000 people, there's still an impact there. So just understand this. Starting a nonprofit, maintaining a nonprofit, especially as a startup founder, it's going to be one of the hardest things for you to do. But I'm not saying that to discourage you. I'm saying that to prepare you so that as you go through the highs and the lows, that you still have your strategy, you still have your focus, and you can navigate even some of the worst of times. And some will argue that we're in some of the worst of times right now, but there have been other periods where there have been worse of times for other people too. So this is the last thing I'll tell you. Don't isolate yourself. Find community, find people like you, share your stories, help each other, encourage each other, vent with each other to help get through whatever you're going through, whether you're in a high period of your nonprofit or a low period. Find you a community of people who can help you through. If you want to join my private community, APP, we would be happy to have you. If you want to learn more about what it's about and what it costs, just comment join below and I will send you the link so you can learn more. If you have a word of encouragement for another nonprofit founder, it would be so awesome if you could drop it below, because somebody needs to hear that they can do this. Thank you so much for watching. If you need help with your nonprofit, visit me at bossonabudget.com. There are resources, paid and some free, for you to use. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.